The recent snap of cold weather and massive focus on heat pumps, I can't help but think back how far these systems have come. My earliest memories on working heat pumps in the winter are not that different compared to what technicians deal with today. Hi, I'm Chris with HVAC Pro Blog, and I want to talk a little bit about charging systems in the winter. See, a lot of controls for defrost cycles in the 1980s models, all due for a replacement in the mid-90s when I started, had pneumatic type switches to force condensers into defrost. Although the idea works in a laboratory, unfortunately these coils were slab style and didn't take into account the lack of maintenance and ice buildup on condenser fan blades. When electricity was at an all-time low cost over a couple decades ago, we rarely took calls for high electric bills, and customers frequently turned on emergency heat strips via their thermostats. Performance issues, rising electricity costs, and the widespread acceptance of R410A ahead of federal mandates saw huge opportunities replacing heat pumps that had HSPF ratings of just 6.8 since 1992. The oldest story I have handling a refrigerant leak in the winter, which is every technician's nightmare emergency call, was from 1998. A system replacement from earlier that summer, which still used R22, had stopped heating one night. Since the cost of electricity was rising then, and the unit under a 1-year labor warranty, I was forced to make that late night service call. The symptom was obvious, as the condenser was locked out on low pressure, with barely enough in the system to not cause the compressor to pull in non-condensables when cycling back on. So I grabbed a tank of R22 and some refrigerant dye, by the way, very early in this tool's development, and told the homeowner I could get them through the evening and search for a leak later that morning. This system took at least 10 pounds of refrigerant. I maybe had that much in a partial tank in the van. When adding refrigerant to the system, it was apparent I would need to warm the tank up as it was close to 0 degrees that night. In the Northeast, water lines that penetrate the buildings are winterized by the first frost, much earlier that fall, so a tank in water didn't have a chance. My only option at the time was to try to use my body heat to warm up the tank. Now, I believe the customer had to have been watching me from a much warmer but far from comfortable condo, as she came outside after about 20 minutes to ask if I was okay. What she saw was a 17-year-old kid with his legs wrapped around in a tank of R22, sitting about 10 inches of snow, rocking back and forth to try to keep myself warm. As you can imagine, this absolutely scared the living hell out of me. And when I jumped up, the tank was frozen to the inside of my legs through my jeans. I still chuckle when I recall this, but this was one of my first follies in what could have been a huge opportunity invention. You see, when charging a heat pump in the winter, service techs have taken some extreme measures. And not all of these are exactly manufacturer or OSHA or EPA approved. First, we've all used hot or warm water in a bucket to heat up the tank. This really works well in mild weather, and if the system uses a refrigerant that can be charged as a vapor. Next, I hope you've tried the push-pull with a recovery machine. This is set up just like recovering a system, but instead pushing the refrigerant into the system with the machine. The next one I've seen is using a torch. Don't do this. Enough said. Another one, using a heat gun. Now this is a safer option compared to a torch, but it'll take a long time to do the surface area of the tank. If you can get the tank warm first, either in your van or inside the home, the heat gun could keep it warm enough. Next, using a crankcase heater. Using a switch and hardwiring a large crankcase heater was the first time I ever saw a realistic way to do this in a cold New England winter. This option, combined with my personal experience, is without a doubt the first time I missed an opportunity creating a tool in the HVAC industry. Next, I've seen and used an old electric blanket. This is a much safer version of the previous one. Crank it up on high and wrap the tank tight. The last one is a refrigerant 120 volt heater strap. This is actually a tool, a combination of the previous two options developed specifically for refrigerant tanks. All right, so let's talk about this with 410A. The refrigerant heater strap helps the most for systems that can be charged as a vapor. Unfortunately, with the more recent 410A systems, the strap will help, but still must be charged as a liquid. The strap can still keep the pressure in the tank higher, helping the slow process of charging a heat pump in the cold winter by weight. Now, just in case you didn't know, R410A is a blend. It's 50% R32 and 50% R125. So, if there is in fact a refrigerant leak, you must remove the refrigerant left before charging with virgin refrigerant. Since you would be connecting your recovery machine to accomplish this, the push-pull method may just be an easier option. Speaking of R32, there's some new heat pumps coming out, right? And since R32 is in fact a pure refrigerant, not a blend, simply adding refrigerant to a system is okay. unlike 410A. Now, this return to handling refrigerant and leaks like the old R22 as a vapor is one of the most attractive features of R32 for service technicians. Unfortunately, though, R32 is a lower global warming potential refrigerant, and this is just an initial step for manufacturers selling in the United States, as it holds a 675 GWP. Most worldwide heat pump manufacturers already use R32 around the world, so this will be the easiest for them to adopt, but some are looking to take one larger step in the near future instead. Which leads us to R454B. This refrigerant blend, which is a combination of about 69% R32 and 31% R1234YF, has very little glide. And actually topping off an R454B system is actually approved for this blend. R454B has a lower 466 global warming potential and boasts higher efficiency with smaller weights compared to 410A. It's very similar in performance to R32. This typically means smaller line set sizes and less time sitting in the cold while we charge systems. So no matter which way your manufacturer swerves with the looming refrigerant phase out, if I was still a technician or completing system startups, I would invest in a tank heater strap. I like to think that whomever invented this has a similar story to tell. Wrapping their legs around a tank around 1 a.m., sitting in 10 inches of snow, and avoiding a slight heart attack from a concerned homeowner startle. Thanks for joining me this week at HVAC Pro Blog, where we provide advice for residential system design, quality installation, and system diagnosis. I'll see you soon.